This clip has been taken from the PPC Podcast Ep.3. Subscribe now.
I just want to give an overview of the autumn statement that happened on October 30th. We can definitely get into a conversation about this. Now, increases in capital gains tax came from that. Lower rates went from 10% to 18%, and higher rates went from 20% to 24%. And then we've got stamp duty land tax as well. So payable by purchases of additional dwellings and by companies went from 3% to 5%. So that's additional dwellings. And then single rate stamp duty land tax payable by companies or non-natural persons for more than 500,000 went from 15% to 17%. Corporation tax has also been maintained. Is there anything else you want to add to that regards to property?
Only the reintroduction of stamp duty as of the new tax year, where it was suspended at 125,000.
Okay.
It at the moment it starts at 250,000 for a single dwelling as your only property. It's going to be reintroduced at 125.
Okay.
So that's going to be 2% of any amount between 125 up to 250.
Yep.
And then it goes on to the bands as they are at the moment. So yeah, it's just reintroducing that band again as of the 1st of April.
Okay. So with these changes to the stamp duty land tax and capital gain tax, how did you feel about it? And do you think you'll have a knock-on effect on the local market?
Yeah, I think that there's going to be an impact because obviously the extra stamp duty is going to put some investors off. We already had a couple of people looking at buying properties as additional properties that one or two have bitten the bullet and one or two have said now that their margins have been taken out. It was nominal to start with. They were playing more the long game, but now it's kind of evaporated that. So it's caused a couple of deals to drop out across the board. Yeah. It's just become more expensive to build portfolio landlords and things like that. I think it was always going to be a tough budget. I wasn't expecting many breaks in there for anything. I don't think it's necessarily the best budget. There's lots and lots of holes we could pick through it.
Yeah.
However, I believe personally, and I know it's easy for me to say that, working in property, working in finance, but I think that the economy starts with property and finance because everything is a knock-on
100%.
effect from there.
Yeah.
So it would have been nice to have seen some breaks in there, something that was more encouraging to help spending, which invariably helps taxes. But yeah, I think it's squeezing landlords and investors, which do offer a viable path to a lot of people who are renters looking to rent. So yeah, it's not the best budget in the world, but I understand why they've done it because they're trying to refill the coffers.
Yeah. That being said, we hosted an event on the day. Everyone that was there expected it to be a lot worse than it actually was.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends who you are. I think if you're Joe Bloggs, you're employed and you're it's a very Labour budget.
Yes,
definitely. They've gone to help the lowest in society, which has always been their MO, and that's fine, and I get that. But I do think what it does is it doesn't look at the bigger picture in respect of it squeezes business owners, it squeezes... I think it's quite a short-sighted budget in my eyes. And the reason why I say that is if I employ somebody, the minimum wage, not that I want to pay somebody minimum wage, I've never paid anybody minimum wage, but what it's done is it's devalued any pay increase that I've given to my team members and staff.
Yeah.
Because minimum wage has been accelerated almost quicker than I can keep up pay rises, so it's almost wiped that out. Also, yes, I understand the reasons behind why there's a minimum wage, but it now becomes a choice for an employer whether they decide to work smarter, cut costs, because in real terms, minimum wage going back 6-7 years ago was about 15-16 grand, and now it's pushing 25 grand. So if you've got 10 members of staff, you've just added over 100 grand to somebody's wage bill.
Yeah.
And that's a hefty cost to go through. And you end up thinking, right, well, maybe I don't recruit somebody else, or I have to think of smarter ways to be able to get more out of my staff, and then you have the more fatigued staff,
Yeah.
and the quality of what you've got has gone down, or you can't grow as quickly.
Yeah.
The balance for me has been slightly incorrect, with there being no breaks as well for the people that are employing everybody. Yeah, it just, we have a really positive number of, in Portsmouth specifically, of aspiring business owners, small businesses,
Yes.
and I think that begins to suffocate that. So it then means that we can't grow as well.
And it's interesting you're saying that as well, in terms of more pressure on staff, because obviously they're going to have to pick up more because there's less staff.
Yeah.
And then even things like mental health nowadays.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just see a lot of people. I'm not saying, I want to word this right. I'm not saying that, people are making excuses or anything like that. But the mental health card seems to be getting pulled a lot these days.
100%.
And I think this is only going to encourage it that much more.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that the workload, when you could have spread the workload a little easier because you were able to afford staff to do things. Now you have to make staff more multifaceted, more things that they've got to juggle and spin on their plate, more pressure it invites.
Of course.
And that invariably links to you can only pay the going rate for the marketplace or what the business can afford. Because if the business can't afford it, then there's no jobs. So the business has got to be able to afford it. If the business can afford it because you've got the people and they're productive and they're healthy and they're happy, that's great. But for instance, if you have a office admin, you would normally suggest an office admin. There's a good office admin would normally get around £25,000 to £30,000 a year. Okay, but when minimum wage is right up there, and you've got an office junior, and you've had somebody who's worked in office space, and now they've been doing the job 7-8 years, and they're going, well, hang on, I should be getting paid more for this, but the business then can't say, well, if I pay you more, I've got to pay a few other people a lot more money, and if they've got to pay a lot of other people more money, then all of a sudden that 2-3 grand increase they've given that one manager, they've had to give to 2-3 managers, which has now inflated that. And it now means that, well, hang on, we actually can't employ the extra person that we need to help you, because by paying you all pay rises, we now can't actually afford the extra admin to support you. So the balancing act of it is a lot more difficult. And it does put a mental load on the business owner, that then it all trickles down, that then defers to the managers, that then defers to the staff.
It just keeps going down. To be honest, it's very interesting you're saying this. I was going to bring this up later. So unemployment from Q2 to Q3 has actually increased. It's gone from 4% to 4.3%. And this comes down to the increases in national insurance contributions and minimum wage, especially in the private sector. It seems to be hurting. I think I've seen something about Sainsbury's, Marks and Spencer's, certain companies anyway that are not hiring anymore, and actually job vacancies has actually gone down quite a bit now as well. And this is all off the back of that. Obviously, when it comes to government jobs and, the bonuses that people are getting thrown there, that is, I guess that's happening in some kind of way, and the money can flow better there. But when it comes to the private sector, even when you're looking at these big companies, and you're seeing that, let alone these smaller ones, like the ones that you're running, for example. So I don't know, it's a very interesting time.
I think if you take the NHS, and I'm not suggesting for a second that nurses, doctors shouldn't get paid what they're worth. However, we have to remember that there is a knock-on effect. So if the NHS then says, right, we've done a 10% increase for everybody, for example, and their wage bill was £1 billion, now you've just added another 100 million to that wage bill, and that's only going to put extra pressure on them. And then what they've gone is, right, in order to cost out that extra money that we're giving you, we've got to cut it from somewhere, or put the taxes up elsewhere. In order to counterbalance it. Now, if you're a smaller business or these private companies, there's some other things that you could add into the mix as well, like AI is big now. So all of a sudden, certain jobs are getting lost to technology as technology gets more efficient and people become less efficient. And then people are thinking, because their costs are being squeezed, because employers are paying more national insurance and having to pay more for the materials, cost of living, etc. anyway, and being taxed more heavily, it just means that all of a sudden, how are they paying for it? And invariably, the biggest cost for most businesses is wages, and that's where the first cuts get made. And as we can all see, if you start to cut down the sales force, like if we look at the NHS, if you cut down the number of doctors or policemen that are out there, then all of a sudden the force or the health service doesn't run as well. And anybody that's tried to get, let alone a mortgage application through, but any kind of application where it used to be call in and it'd be done quite quickly, it's now taking a lot longer.
Yeah.
And that's because shrinking sales force.
Yeah. I was even going to say that about infrastructure. I think that's where you're kind of it's kind of being sacrificed in that respect.
Yeah.
Because infrastructure needs to sort of like be built, and it's to a set. I don't know. When I'm thinking about infrastructure, I'm thinking about NHS.
Yeah.
I don't really want to go there.
No, we'll stay on that hot topic. We love you, nurses and doctors.
We really do. I don't want to go there, but that's where my mind goes when it comes to that kind of thing. All right. Before we veer off, let me bring it back to inflation.
Yeah.